Hey, everybody, welcome to the Hell Road Podcast, where we talk about unique and forgotten vehicles, road trips, travel, racing, writing, our current car adventures. My name is Ethan,
My name is Paul.
and today we don't have any special guests. It's just me and Paul today, but we
Yep.
have a lot to talk about. It's been a couple weeks since we recorded, maybe more
Yeah.
than a couple. But
Yeah.
yeah, we've had a lot of car adventures that have happened in the last few weeks. Some ups, some downs, but I think there's a few cars that have died. There's a few cars that have left. There's a few cars that have gotten upgraded
Mm.
in our collective fleet. So I think we should probably start off with you, Paul, because
Mm.
you actually have a vehicle that has not died. You've actually made some improvements to it. You've taken it some cool places.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
what's going on with the Fit? What's going on with that awesome blue
The
Fit? Actually,
the
technically, what is the color? What is the color of?
a Aegean blue
Thank you, Aegean
metallic.
blue. Okay.
Aegean blue metallic. Well, as much fun as it is going to be to talk about the Fit, I got to talk really quickly about the other vehicle in my small fleet of two vehicles.
Yes.
The infamous Daihatsu Charade. I am currently, as we're recording this, sitting next to two pieces of unobtainium that I got
Whoa.
from the wonderful country of Latvia. Thank you to the people of Latvia for helping me out on this one. I have control arms for the Daihatsu Charade. Now, I believe we spoke about this, I don't know, 20 episodes ago. I attempted to buy control arms for the Daihatsu because the ball joints were collapsed on the stock arms. And so of all places, AutoZone carried them. And so I ordered them from them and got them home and got the car lifted and everything ready to go. And turns out they were the wrong control arms. So that was a sad story. They were actually meant for a sedan version of a Charade. So
And that's different.
yeah, well, I guess the suspension was slightly different on it. So
That's
it wasn't.
strange.
Yeah, it was very strange. So they went back. So I've been kind of searching and waiting for like I don't want to say like a good deal to come up because it's really hard with this car because all the parts, if you can't source them from the United States, they're usually getting sourced from eBay, and you're going to have to pay a heavy price for shipping. A lot of the parts, a lot of the good quality parts are actually in Australia, and most often the case is that the shipping is more than the part. So
Sure, of course.
so I couple weeks, but it's actually probably been about a month or so. I had this like I guess memory pop in my head about my Mini Cooper days when I used to like order like Euro specific mini parts, like for the Mini One that they had over there, which was like a version of their Mini Cooper that was like below the Cooper version that we had. It was like had like flat black trim and stuff like that. So I like used to go over like on ebay.uk and buy parts that way. So I was like, well, why don't I try doing that for the Charade? And so I tried a bunch of different countries and actually got kind of lucky on like I guess you'd call it the German or not. Yeah, I guess it would be the German eBay. And I found some control arms. They're actually a good quality brand. They're made by Febi Bilstein. So it's a quality aftermarket part. So I ordered them and it took them a long time, but they finally got here and they're really nice. I haven't had a chance to put them in the car yet, but I'm very excited because that's kind of like one of the last pieces of the Daihatsu that needs to get repaired for it. That was like from like the 6 or 7 years ago when I bought the car, that was when they did the initial safety inspection on it, which was kind of funny. They're like, oh yeah, it's got collapsed ball joints. You need to replace those. And I'm like, yeah, that shouldn't be an issue. Yeah. Well,
sure.
So here we are.
7 years later.
7 years later, they're sitting right here next to me. So I'm very excited for that. But it did develop a new noise, and I'm not quite sure what it is. I've actually taken a close look at the braking system on it, and it's got this kind of a whirring noise that's going on in the front. I'm got a fear that it could be a wheel bearing. Well, not necessarily a fear because that part's actually the part's readily available. It's not like some unobtainium part like control arms or something like that. So
sure.
So to be continued. I'll get the control arms put in and I can finally get the car aligned, and it should track straight then, which would be nice. So But yeah, that's the fun stuff with the Daihatsu. I hadn't driven it in a few weeks till today. I actually took it on a Target run. I had to go to Target and yep, made that little whirring noise, but started up fine after it had not been started for like 3 or 4 weeks and had no problem. So the car
The
never
old
ceased.
trusty Daihatsu.
The old trusty
Yep.
200 and whatever 30,000 mile Charade never
Yeah.
lets me down. So but yeah, that's all my fun Daihatsu stuff going. I'm really excited for it, especially to get the control arms in, just because like it's gonna feel like a kind of almost what they might have felt like when it was new. We'll see.
Sure. Yes.
Yeah, maybe we'll see.
Yeah.
Iron out the other little things, and then we'll be there. So, but yes, the Honda Fit. Well, where
Yeah.
should
What's
we
going on
start?
with the Fit? What's going on with the Fit? Because I know you've been doing a lot of stuff, and
Yes.
you're looking to do a track day pretty soon to kind of
I
test everything out, right?
Yes. Well, it's kind of, it's one of those stories that starts, I don't want to say in tragedy, but a couple good, oh gosh, it's probably been a month or
Any
two
good
now.
story has tragedy. You know
Any good,
that.
yes, yes. Um, we had a pretty significant rain event here in Southern California, and one that was significant enough to one day when I was leaving work kind of cause a bit of a almost zero visibility situation because it was raining so hard. And it turns out
Yeah.
the wonderful Southern California roads, which I know there's other roads that are in worse shape than Southern California,
Exactly.
but
Yeah.
some of them are not very good. And one of them that I travel on to get to work is one of those roads that's not very good. Actually had a pretty significant sized pothole open up, and I ended up, the final tally was I bent the shaft of my left side front strut, as well as I bent the right front control arm.
That's crazy.
It was a huge
That's an
hit.
insane
I'm sur-
pothole.
I'm surprised the airbags didn't go off, and I'm also surprised, of all things, I did not bend a wheel.
Yeah, that's
It's
insane.
the physics behind it baffle me. I
Yeah.
still I think about it all the time, but
And you didn't pop the tire.
it
The
didn't pop the tire.
tire.
No, tire's fine.
Yeah.
Everything is
Yeah.
fine. It's the weirdest thing. So, but I ended up needing to replace all this stuff, and it kind of worked out because I did like the thing that the 17-year-old kid does when they get a Honda and they just slap some lowering springs on the stock shocks, and that's how I had been running it since I put those lowering springs on. Because again, I'm a giant child, but and it kind of was the thing that let me down at the last track day, the stock shocks and struts, because I was
Yeah.
getting so much rebound coming out of some of the corners. It was just like it was just bouncing. I was like,
Bouncing everywhere. Yeah.
this is not good. It's not good for times. So um it's one of those good things that the car gods gave down to me, I guess. But so what I ended up doing is I needed to replace my shocks, or my front struts, and I was like, well, might as well replace all four. And I did a little bit of digging on this one because there's not actually a performance strut or shock upgrade for my generation of Fit that's like easily obtainable in the United States. There's some over in Japan that you can get, and there's some that are available, but they're very expensive. But
Yeah.
through some very precise internet research, there was a good amount of people that had put the previous generation Fits performance shock absorbers onto the my generation Fits, so the older generation. So I took a gamble on it and I bought a nice set of Conies, the oranges, which I guess are they're like slightly they're more aggressive, more meant for like autocross and stuff like that. They're not full on Coney Sports, but they're like a step below.
Well, you still want to be able to commute to work and not be completely punished.
Exactly. So so I got those and got them put in, and everything was everything buttoned up pretty good. And then same time got a control arm and swapped that in, and everything was good. I took it to the alignment shop, found a nice new alignment shop kind of close to my work that's very 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 awesome, and the guy there is very he's a perfectionist and had me in the seat while he like set everything and making sure.
Nice.
I was like, okay, yeah, this is my new favorite alignment shop.
Yeah,
So
that's awesome.
So that was all good. So we got all that dialed in on the fit, and it was good to go. So I think it was actually literally like the day or two before we had a fun little meetup. So I got to try out the new goods in the car on our little excursion up to the well talked about, well documented, fun road in Southern California that everybody knows and loves.
It's Angeles Crest.
Oh yeah, that's what it was.
Just don't tell anybody.
Don't tell anybody it's Angeles Crest.
Everybody knows it's great, but don't tell anybody else.
Don't tell anybody. Yeah. Terrible road. So
that's awful.
Yeah,
yes.
It's awful.
Lots of potholes.
Don't ever go there. Yeah, and get stuck behind a Winnebago.
Yes.
So I got to test it out a bit there, and it felt absolutely awesome. So it got me more jazzed to want to do another track day, which kind of goes and trickles down to just this. I'm not kind of doing a track day. It's more of a time attack coming up.
Oh, it's a time attack. Oh, geez, I didn't realize that.
Yeah. So I kind of have
better get some new driving gloves and really take this seriously.
I need to. Yes. No, it's going to be fun. It's kind of a series that they do in Southern California. This group called the VTech Club. Even though my car doesn't have VTech, it has Earth Dreams intelligent VTech.
Oh, fancy.
Yes, intelligent VTech. It doesn't do anything. But no, it's a time attack series, and there's a bunch of other fits going, so it's going to be awesome. That's coming up in about a month. So I'm super excited for that, and currently in search of a new set of tires too. Because
what are you going to do? What are you thinking about getting? I mean, because there's so many good options. I mean, you got pretty decent options for your fit, right? For that tire size.
Yeah. I run the size that doesn't really jive with the factory settings or whatever. I don't care. Okay. It's like the speedometer is going to be off a little bit. Whatever. I don't care. So I'm running a very standard 205 50 15.
Yes.
Tire.
We use that on the Liam Neeson. I used to use that on my Spec Miata. There's a lot of
It's the best tire size. It's literally the best tire size. I used it on my Mini Cooper. I used it on my Mazda 2, and now I have them on the Fit. So currently I've got the Dunlop. I can never say it. Dureza's the Z3s, which are
that's exactly what we use on Liam Neeson too.
There you go. Yep. There you go. Those made it through. I've had them on for about a year, so that's been 2 track days, multiple trips to that really terrible road that you should never go drive in Southern California.
Awful.
I just did a smallish road trip on them, so I think they can maybe last for this next track day. It's just getting towards the end of their life, but that's pretty damn good for a 200 treadwear tire to be used and driven in the rain, driven through a huge ass pothole, and they live through all that. So
I'll give you some counterpoint to that. So we use the Durezas on Liam Neeson, and if you've ever seen any pictures of Liam Neeson on a racetrack, you can see that the suspension is definitely not, quote, dialed in. It's just like the nose is in the air when you accelerate. It dives, like it just squats down when you brake. It's awful. Like you can see, like you can probably fit, I don't know, you could probably fit a whole another 15-inch tire in the wheel gap when you're turning.
Oh my goodness.
it's pretty ridiculous. So it doesn't wear very well, but we've ruined a set of Durezas in a weekend.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, it's definitely, I think we've ruined 2 fronts in a day. So your mileage may vary depending on your condition quality of the car and driving skill.
It just sounds like I'm not pushing them hard enough. Maybe that's the thing.
Maybe you just need a shittier car. I think that's probably what you need.
I've just called myself out that I'm just a shit driver and I'm not pushing them hard enough. We'll see.
Well, one day we'll get Liam Neeson fixed up, and if Liam Neeson can outrun you at the track, then we'll know there's a problem.
There you go.
Although Liam does have quite a bit more horsepower than the Fit, I believe.
Yes.
Yep.
Quite a bit. So yeah,
Yeah.
so tire wise, there's a lot of choices out there. Just unfortunately, right now, because everything's kind of people are starting to swing into track days, doing a lot more of them now. COVID's kind of somewhat releasing its grasp, and people are wanting to get out and do more track days. A lot
Yep.
of these tires are on back order, and they can become,
Uh,
you can get them, and they're available the day after the track day or the week
oh,
after the
bummer.
track day. So
Yep.
so we'll see. I'm most likely going to have to just run these and just give them the final
Hmm.
send off, even though it is a time attack series and I'm
Yeah.
supposed to do my best. But it's just for fun. I'm not aiming to become the the champion of anything. I mean, they group the Honda. They have like a group that's like kind of for the catch-all cars, and the Honda Fits are in there. So it's like I'd be going up against cars that are like way faster, even like
Okay.
in stock form. So even if I like fully built the Fit, it's still not going to make too big of a difference. So
Are there any fits out there that are like really more or less stock, or does everybody kind of have some sort of
Oh
modifications going
yeah,
on?
no, there's a couple out there I think that run that are more or less stock, or kind of more or less like you go from mild to wild. Like I think at least with my the build on it I've done has been more focused to have fun at track days and
Yeah.
have fun in the canyons. That's kind of always
Sure.
been my mo with all of my builds for my cars. But there's some people that go out there, like the last track day I was at, there was a kid out there in a stock Fit that was like still like there was nothing. I think it was even a
Just street tires.
street tires. It was a
Yeah.
CVT as well, and I was just like,
Oh,
okay,
geez. Okay.
cool.
Yeah.
Go. That's great. That's cool to
That's
see. But
awesome. Yeah.
on the other end of the spectrum, at this event, you have people that have Fits with K series swaps in them.
Yeah.
So you're talking about a Fit with 200 horsepower, which
Geez.
sounds like an absolute riot and sounds like so much fun. But so you have
Yeah.
that. So it's you got multiple ends of the spectrum. So it's going to be a ton of fun. I'm very excited and looking forward to it. And it's at Streets of Willow again, which
Yeah.
is
Good track. I love that track.
it's a good track. I'm really hoping this year my goal would be to drive another racetrack that's not Streets of Willow. And
Well, I've actually never been to Chuckwalla. That would be
yeah,
I
they
would love to go there.
I would as well. You know, it's funny you bring up Chuckwalla because I was not very long ago. I was very, very close to it, and I was
Uh,
thinking like, I should just drive up there so I can take a picture in front of the whatever it is, that water tanker truck thing that has Chuckwalla
mhm.
written on it. That everybody that goes there for the track day is
Sure.
like, hey, you see it posted on their Instagram, like, oh, they're at Chuckwalla, and it's like, oh, that's so cool. I want to get my own picture there. It's kind of like people that always like want a picture of their car going down the corkscrew at Laguna
Oh, yeah.
Seca,
Sure.
or at Button Willow. I know there's one corner that people always, at least kind of more recently, I see this on Instagram a lot. A lot of people that are at Button Willow, they get like the slow mo video of them going through, I guess like the bus stop or something like that, or maybe even over Phil Hill. It's pretty cool. So
Sure.
it's one of those things.
Oh, all this talk about racing makes me want to get back out there again.
Yeah,
It's I got to do it. Maybe I'll have to buy myself a fit. Buy myself a fit and I can join you
hey,
out there. I got to
you
do
know,
something.
they're not too the first generation ones aren't too expensive.
Yeah.
They're fairly cheap, and I mean
Mhm.
everything's readily available. You can just huck all the parts out of it or all the interior out of it and put a bucket in it, and
Sure.
there you go. You're off to the
Yep.
races. So
Yeah, and this was the fit was what was the class of racing that they did with the fits and the Mazda 2s? Am I thinking of
the
spec? Oh, geez.
B spec,
B-spec, thank you.
yeah.
Yeah, and that didn't really take off, I don't think, did it? I think
It did at first, and it still exists.
yeah,
They still do it on the SCCA level. They have the B spec class for when they run all their sanctioned SCCA events.
sure.
And as far as I know, that class now, it at first it was meant to be like kind of the small hatchbacks. Any of them can kind of go in and compete there, and so
Yeah,
you'd have like Mazda did a big push with it, and Honda did as well, but also Mini,
yeah.
and Chevy also had something with the Sonics out
They have the
there.
Sonics in there. Oh, okay.
Yeah, it was a pretty big deal, but it's kind of gotten down to just the two chassis that are kind of the most competitive, which turns out was the Mazda 2 and
Mhm.
the Chevy Sonic. So
Yep.
people still
Interesting.
kind of run fits out there, but it's mostly those two. It's kind of like what happened with the street touring or STS class and SECA in the early 2000s. It was meant to like, bring in all like the sport compact kids to learn how to autocross, and turned into like a spec
Sure.
89 Honda Civic SI class. That's kind of what happened with
Yeah.
B-Spec. It like, oh yeah, if you've got a base Mini Cooper or a Honda Fit or a Mazda 2, come on out and let's do B-Spec. And then it just kind of turned into, oh no, you got to have a Mazda 2 to actually be competitive,
To
or
compete. Yeah.
or a Chevy Sonic. So it's
Yep.
kind of what happened there. So
Yeah, I haven't really followed SCCA in a long time. When I was racing, it was obviously primarily Spec Miata,
mhm.
Spec E30, and then 944s,
Yes.
944s. That was really kind of it. There were like a few other cars sort of peppered in there, but I'm not sure what it is now. That was probably like 10 years ago now.
Yeah.
I'm assuming it's still dominated by Spec Miata, but I really don't know.
Yeah,
Um,
it's kind of weird how you'll see cars go through like that. I remember I try to watch every year when they have like the nationals. Like more
yes.
recently, it's been like streams and stuff like that. But I just remember like
Yeah.
10 years ago, where like almost everybody was figuring out some way to run a Pontiac Solstice GXP in
Yeah.
whatever class they could, because it was such a great car.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't think we've talked. I don't think I've gushed over the Pontiac Solstice on the show before, but I love that thing. I mean, it's super cool and
Yeah.
very understated, and but at the same time can be very competitive, even just out of the box, what that car offers. So
Sure.
um,
Yeah.
but yeah, that's something for me to gush over another time. Me go into a 20-minute tangent about the solstice.
We'll have a whole episode for the solstice in the sky. Well, because we do
Solstice.
have, if we do that, we do have to talk about the hardtop solstice, which looks
Yes.
awesome, and they made like two of them. So,
Yeah, it's really
uh,
low. It's really low. Yeah,
yeah,
definitely. Well, those good old time, good old cars.
yeah,
But yeah, so that's kind of what's going on with the Fit. I did mention I took a little bit of a road trip. I can just real quick touch on that.
yeah.
You know, I we had my daughter's spring break a couple weeks ago from her school, and so we did an Airbnb thing, which I, funny enough, I'd never been in an Airbnb or done it. My wife had done it many times, but I'd never had done it when she did various things with her friends and stuff. So it was kind of cool for me. But we got an Airbnb in, it was I want to say Palm Springs, but it was really in Cathedral City. But it was a very nice
Yeah,
house,
sure.
and had a really cool heated pool. It was like a saltwater pool and stuff like that. So
Ooh,
it was yeah, all sorts of fancy stuff. So it was cool. Got to spend a few days out there. But the conclusion of the trip, they headed back home, but I took off and did a little just fun driving trip on my own, that I kind of had planned out the route and stuff like that, because I'd never seen the Salton Sea with my own eyes. So I wanted to
hmm,
kind of see it, and there was a few other things I wanted to see kind of down. So I went down south of Palm Springs, south, on the, I guess you would say, the west side of the Salton Sea, and went over and saw the I can never say it right, Borrego Springs.
oh yeah, Borrego Springs. That's a small little
It's
town right
cool.
by
It's
Anza Borrego.
yeah, it's
And you saw the dinosaur sculptures that are right around there.
yes, I did.
Yep.
It was on a Friday, and it was actually I was surprised at how many people were out there,
Hmm.
driving their cars up to these things, taking pictures of them. I was like, there's a lot of people out here. But I
Yeah.
found one that was the most closest to my heart, and it was the giant sloth. And it was also coincidentally the closest to the actual road. So I was like, well, if the Fit gets stuck, I can probably push it, because it's not
Yeah. It
stock
doesn't
ride
weigh that
height.
much.
So and it doesn't weigh that much. So I drove over to it and got a cool picture by it and everything like that. So it was fun. I took another little fun road back up and around, and basically wanted to go back up and out through Idlewild and I can never remember the name of the road, the 240, the
247. I don't remember.
the one that goes to Idlewild. Is very cool. It was very fun. It was a very nice, relaxing drive for me to kind of just like decompress and think. And also, I had my new Coney shock absorbers on, so that was nice. And it just felt good to get out and drive, even if it wasn't like
Yeah.
all day. Did take me a good couple hours to do everything. I stopped a few times and took some photos and just enjoyed driving, and that's something I hadn't gotten to do in such a long time. So not only was like the little mini vacation at the Airbnb super cool, but just getting to do that drive and enjoying the car. And I don't even think I didn't even listen to any music or anything on the whole thing. I just had the windows down, and it was just
Yep.
just
So those are some of the best drives when you just got a really nice road and the weather's just
yeah.
perfect, and you don't even want to listen to music. You just want to listen to the sound of the engine. You want to you want to smell all the smells coming into your windows, and and that's a particularly great area to drive because you get pretty big elevation change all the way up to Idlewild,
Yeah.
and then back down to Borrego Springs, which is pretty much desert.
Yes, that was an interesting road. The road go. I guess you could say I went up the road, but I can't
Yep.
even explain how it went. But basically, there was a lot more elevation that was on that road than I thought there was going to be. I was like,
Did you hit any snow?
I did, yeah.
You did. Okay, there was some snow. Okay.
And as we experienced on our trip to that road that nobody should go drive on,
Yeah, definitely not Angeles Crest.
definitely
Yes.
not Angeles Crest Highway.
Yeah.
When you go on that road, or when you hit snow and you're driving a car that has, as I've said, pretty well worn 200 treadwear tires that are not recommended to drive in snow, things can get really scary really fast. And so, yeah, there was a couple patches that had some snow on it still, which was a
Yeah.
little surprising. It was more up towards Idlewild, but I was driving. I was like, oh shit, there is snow. And I was looking for those. I was looking for those shiny patches on the road, like we
Yeah.
experienced on
Look for
Angeles
the
Crest.
yes. Look
And
for the dry line.
yeah,
Look for the Yep.
yes. So, but no, it was great getting out to enjoy the car and just kind of have fun with it. See, that's the thing. It doesn't need to be a BMW M4 or a Toyota Supra or a GTR. It could be, a grandma spec Honda Fit, and as long as you enjoy driving it, as long as you enjoy driving, it's fun. And so I was super happy.
Sure.
Awesome. Just
Yeah. I mean that's that's nice that you got to take a little bit of extra time to drive out there.
Mhm.
Yeah, I mean, we've been talking about this a lot earlier in the podcast. I don't know, year ago about wanting to do some sort of road rally,
Mhm.
and I think this area would be the perfect spot to do it. I think you found a lot of cool roads that we might be able to use for our first ever
Yes.
road rally, and maybe find some good places we can stop, some places where we can avoid the snow and avoid the ice.
Yes,
But
yes. Avoid the snow, avoid the ice. Places that I looked up ahead of time, thinking like, "Oh, that might be a cool place to stop," and then I drove past it, and I was like, "That's not there anymore." Or no, I don't think more than one car should stop there. So, but
Sure.
no, it was very cool, a very cool area. There's a lot more to explore over there than I initially had thought. So more to
Yeah.
come on that, but I think that is a great area to go and enjoy a fun trip with some like-minded individuals.
Yes. Speaking of a fun trip with like-minded individuals, you did touch upon the taking that trip up that road that we shall not mention, and it's definitely not Angeles Crest Highway.
No,
Um, well, we had such a fun time. I don't know,
yes,
maybe it was like almost a month ago now. Geez, I don't know. It feels like it was only a couple weeks ago,
it
but at this
does.
point, it was probably a month ago.
We should go
Yeah, just I
again.
know. Yeah, taking really kind of just getting some friends together, just going up some of these back roads and experiencing some of the amazing scenery that we have here in Southern California, and getting out there early so we beat some of the traffic,
Yes.
there's so many good roads, so many good places to check out. And that was where I took out the Ford Probe. Took out the
Yeah.
probe. I had thought I had sorted out the overheating issue,
Hmm.
and that car is so much fun when it's running right, when things are like actually going right with that car. Like, you wouldn't think 1997 Ford Probe GT, you wouldn't think that as being a vehicle that would be your number one choice for a canyon road, but it handled surprisingly
Yeah.
well. No, it has decent tires on it. It has Bilsteins on it. It was, um, there has been some not modification, but some upkeep done on the thing. Obviously,
Right.
I put a lot of time and money into the engine to try to get the thing to not give me trouble.
Mhm.
And it sounds awesome. That Mazda
Yeah,
motor just sounds so good at
it
high
did.
RPMs. It did. Just notice the past tense did. But we'll get to that in a second. But yeah, I that the engine sounds awesome. It was nice to actually be able to get it on a road where I can really kind of stretch its legs and see what it's capable of.
Yeah, I
And
couldn't keep up with you, and I mean, not saying much because I'm in a fit, but I was in the fit, but like you were gone. I was like,
yeah. Yeah, the thing is, this car. So the funny thing is about the Ford Probe '97, the second generation Ford Probe, um, the 2.5 liter and the GT. I think it made 164 horsepower or
"Mhm,
thereabouts in GT spec. Mine. So these things constantly have problems with solenoids, and mine obviously had every single problem you could possibly think of. And mine had the problem with the solenoid, so that the now I'm forgetting what it's called, but there's a special thing where it opens up intake a little bit differently, so it can at higher RPMs it can um what is it called? VRIS. It's the VRIS system. Yeah, and that was not functioning properly in my car. So I don't think I had 164 horsepower. I think I probably had something like 140, and still it was pretty damn quick, and it
mhm."
handled really well. And it actually was, you know, surprisingly confidence inspiring. Like I feel like I could go around corners and know what the car was going to do. Sometimes you get in a car, you feel like, okay, it's always, that it's either going to like, you kind of wonder like, I can't push it too hard because it's going to understeer here. Or I can't push it too hard because I'm going to like oversteer and like fly off the edge of the cliff or something. But
Mhm.
this one, I felt pretty good about pushing it really pretty hard every single place I was on the road.
Hmm.
But as we got to the top, that's when I started to notice the temperature gauge kind of fluctuating a little bit. And I haven't made a video about this drive yet, which I will do at some point because
Mhm.
the car has been sitting in my yard ever since this drive.
Mm.
But yeah, we got to the top there. Actually, you were mentioning we got all the way to the top. Well, a little bit past the highest elevation there, which I don't know how high is the elevation there. It's pretty damn high. It's like
Yeah,
seven thousand feet.
I think it was about 7, yeah. It's
Yeah,
about
which that probably does not help the overheating problem with my vehicle. So yeah,
mm,
it started to start temperatures. It was kind of funny because the gauge would get a little hot, kind of go back to normal, get a little bit
mhm,
hot, kind of go back to normal. So it was sort of confusing as to like what exactly was going on. But when we kind of get there past the top there, and we started to notice some snow, we started to notice some water coming onto the road, and that's when I quickly realized that, oh, this is all ice. So I was just sliding all over the place. And I think that's when we decided, okay, let's stop.
let's stop.
Let's turn around, go back a little before this ice, because that was past Newcomb's Ranch. So
Yeah, it was a
yeah, at
good
that point we
4 or 5 miles,
yeah
I think, past Newcomb's,
yeah
and that's when we hit that, and yeah, it was you, me, and my buddy Glenn. He's on some,
yeah
I think he was on 200 treadwear tires as well, so he,
yeah
uh, yeah, that was all she wrote on that one, so let's go back
yeah.
down.
It was a little sketch. Yeah, we were supposed to meet people at Newcomb's, but there was a little miscommunication, so we ended up going past it. But anyway, so we turned around, met up, and that's when, or actually right about there is when I realized, yeah, this car is not gonna make it. It started to leak coolant. It was, and I had spent so much time, hours, research, like, just trying to get this thing to run cool. Um, it has a new water pump. It had a new thermostat. The only thing that I didn't replace was the radiator. Pretty much everything else was replaced.
Mhm.
So I'm kind of wondering if, yeah, maybe it just was the radiator this whole time. Well, obviously, it definitely initially had a huge leak out of the water pump, so I definitely had to fix that.
Yeah.
But I mean, maybe that was just the last thing that I didn't fix. Then maybe that's where the issue was. But I'm kind of thinking that. So I get to the top, and pretty much it's just completely overheating, and I'm trying to figure out. I'm weird. There's no cell service up there.
Right.
We're so far away from everything. But I figured it's downhill. I can probably coast it downhill and not really have too much of an issue. So um, So I had to bid you guys adieu. It's like halfway through this awesome drive where the car is just like handling so well and it's so great. It's such a wonderful day, and I'm like, okay, this car is done for. And there's, like trying to deal with like getting a tow truck all the way up there, that would have been a huge pain in the ass.
Yeah, not to mention it would have been like probably dark by the time they got up there.
Oh
And
God, I know. Yeah, and it was cold. Like
yeah,
I was not prepared for like,
how
like
cold it was.
28 degrees, So I was like, I got it while this car is still running. I got to get back down to civilization so that way I don't freeze up here, for however long we're up here. So that's actually a good thing to keep in mind when you're doing these drives like this, is
Mhm,
to probably plan a little bit more ahead for. I mean, I figured, I'm really close in quotes, close to home.
mhm,
I didn't bring like extras. I brought some tools. I brought, a few things, but I didn't bring up like, a day's worth of water or anything like that. But,
right.
probably when you take these drives, you probably should bring some extra water. I did have about 20 Cliff Bars. So I think I probably would have been okay. um, but I eat a lot of Cliff Bars. Uh, but anyway, yeah. So I get the car up. I figured, okay, see you guys later. I did one last hurrah as I was driving by you guys, get
Yep,
full throttle. Like, okay, if this car is going to go out, it's
sounded
going to go out
great.
with a bang. Um, and I get down kind of down to the bottom of the hill, and the thing is, the temperature gauge is sort of getting back to normal. I'm like, maybe just coasting down the hill was
Enough.
the enough, because the last video I did, the same thing happened. I drove up a mountain and then it overheated and then just coast down the hill. It was fine. So I figured, okay, well, I can make it home. And it started to creep up a little bit as I got home, and I got it home, and I looked at the, once it cooled off, I looked at the coolant, and it did seem like there's some oil in the coolant. So
Ooh,
and also I think it did finally, by the time I was right by where I was starting to get home, I was like, I'm only like 3 minutes from home. And I was like, I'll just push it. I'll just get it home. I think that's maybe was a mistake, because I think that like 3 or 4 minutes that I just said, hey, I think I can make it home. This is, it's an aluminum block. So I shouldn't have done that. So I think probably it was a combination of, um, like a lot of coolant probably just being burnt off and going out of the tailpipe and me not knowing it.
mhm.
And that's why the temperature gauge probably kept going up and down and up and down. And that's exactly what happened to Liam Neeson when it's like, oh, it's kind of normal. That's because that's where the coolant is by the sensor. And then when it was going up, it was probably just a pocket of air by the sensor. And it's
Yeah,
like, this is super hot. Um, so I think that's what was kind of confusing me. I was like, why is it the temperature gauge just keep bouncing up and down? But yeah, I think the head gasket was going, but it was mainly just spewing coolant out of the exhaust. And it's weird that no smoke. Like I didn't ever see. You were behind me most of the time. You didn't see
yeah.
white smoke coming out of my car, did you?
There was one time when I saw like a little puff of something,
Okay.
but I thought maybe you had just because there were some patches of the road that were a little wet. So I thought
Yeah.
maybe it was just like spray from that. There was actually, now that I think about it, there was one time when I did get my windshield sprayed. Um,
Oh, jeez.
and I was like, oh, well,
Sorry.
I hope that's just water from the road. But at the back of my mind, I was like, shit. I
That's
hope,
probably coolant
I hope that's not
or
cool. Yeah,
oil.
yeah. No,
Yeah.
it wasn't oil. And
Okay.
yeah, it must have just been water. So we'll say it was just water. Because that was kind of actually that was kind of early on in the run. When because I was following you. Yeah, I was following
Yeah.
you,
Yeah.
and yeah, there was when I was getting close. Oh yeah, there's Ethan, and then it was right over my windshield. I was like, oh,
Well, that's
okay.
good to know. Yeah.
But
Oh
at the
man.
same time, I could have sworn it was water because I ended up wiping it with my windshield wiper and it didn't streak.
Did streak, yeah.
That was my whole thing. It's like if it streaks, then it's oil or it's coolant, and it didn't streak. It just came off like water. So I was like, okay, it should be.
Interesting.
So
Yeah. I don't know. I mean, so ultimately got the thing home. Definitely not running right. I will take full responsibility for, like I shouldn't have pushed it that extra like 3 or 4 minutes or whatever it was. I think that kind of put the nail in the coffin of that motor. I think it's done. Like I don't think there's any saving this particular motor, which sucks because I put so much time and effort into it.
yeah,
But at the end of the day, it was a $300 car, so I don't feel too bad about it.
right.
Um, the car. like was gonna be this car was headed for the junkyard anyway when I bought
Right.
it. So I got, had another little bit of life put it into it.
Yeah, no, and it did, and that's the thing is you were able to give it that, but at the same time, out of all the cars, at least since I've known you, that you've owned, like there's been kind of a lot of love put into the Probe
Yeah.
versus the other cars that you've had. Like some of them, which has been like, okay, well, no, that's the end
I
of that
just
one. Like the GS, but like there's something about the Probe. I mean, you said it when you were driving it. Everything felt great. It was confidence inspiring. It sounded great. Everything was driving good with the car. I mean, this car was like I think it was the 1997 Motor Trend Car of the Year. Like it
mhm.
it it, it was the gem of the automotive journalism world when it was released. It was a really cool car. I just think that it's kind of one of those cars that people bought thinking, oh, it's just like a Ford, like a Mustang, and like I can fix it with a hammer. But with the transverse V6 and all the aluminum block, all these other like things that were still not really commonplace as they are nowadays. People
Yeah.
they just fell behind on maintenance, or
That's
one major thing
exactly what happened.
one
Yeah.
major thing broke, and they got the quote from the mechanic who was like, yeah, I got to take the motor out to change this water pump. And they're like,
Yep.
okay, bye-bye.
Yep.
So the motor may be done or is done, but
It
I don't
definitely
know.
is done. Well, yeah, you totally hit it on the head. I mean, really, I think that's the main problem with this car is that they they can be reliable, but actually performing the maintenance on the vehicle is not easy. There's very little space to work with in that
Mhm.
engine bay. And there are some issues like there's vacuum issues, there's solenoid issues that constantly happen. But if you own these cars and you actually care for them, you just start to figure those things out, and
Right.
you have spare solenoids. That's what I did. I bought like 6 of them just to have them there. I replaced 4, and I had a couple extra that I had on hand because I knew they were going to fail. And I knew that's why the VRIS system was still not working properly, is because I knew there was a vacuum leak um, under the intake manifold. So this engine you've got kind of crammed in the front there. The intake manifold goes over the valve cover gasket. So in order to get under there to replace that vacuum line, it's like a little check valve or something. You have to take the whole intake manifold off, which I was planning on doing. It's stupid because I just had the intake manifold gasket replaced along with the valve cover gasket, and I should have had them do that. But I was like, okay, I can do this myself. I was going to take that off. I was going to replace those valves and replace I bought silicone hoses, purple silicone hoses to go along with the purple car.
Oh
I
man.
know I didn't even get to use them. um so yeah, that is not going to happen. It's like, I don't know, this I think that's what happens with these cars is that, yeah, brand new, they're wonderful. And
Mhm.
I think that you just don't see them. They sold a lot of these, like,
They did.
initially,
I remember seeing
towards
a
the
ton
end.
of them.
Yep, towards the end, they didn't sell that well, but, at least in the United States. I don't know if these ever sold very well, overseas, but, because I know they had them in England,
Oh,
UK.
I didn't know that. I
Uh,
thought they only
yep.
sold them in the States.
Yeah, I think they
Huh.
had them in the UK as well. I just
Wonder
don't
what
think
happened.
they were very popular there.
Right.
Uh, but yeah, I think that's what happened is that, they're hard to maintain, and then the second or third or fourth owners, they fall into the hands of, like, 16-year-old kids. They're like, I'm just going to drive it into the ground.
Mhm.
And now, like, people are having nostalgia for these cars, like a lot of cars from the 80s and 90s now,
Yep.
and there's so few of these left. And that's one of the reasons why I bought this thing. It's just that, it's just one a forgotten vehicle, and then once you actually experience it, you remember, oh, this is actually a pretty damn good car.
Yeah.
Um, just impossible to maintain. Just so hard. Like, I think that's one of the things. Like, I started to, like, see the light at the end of the tunnel and see the potential of this vehicle and see,
Mhm.
like, and that's why I spent so much time on it. I didn't spend that much money on it. I spent a lot of time on it because
Time, yeah.
I I could see that, like, there's a lot of potential here. There's a really good platform here. This is a car that's going to be a lot of fun when it's actually running properly. Um, and, like, it was just constantly knocking me down. Like, every little thing I'd fix, it'd be like 2 more things would come
Yeah.
up, and it's just, but then I would get, like, I would drive it, and then it'd be like, okay, I'm gonna keep at it. I'm gonna keep trying to crack at this thing. And then finally I killed, killed it. Oh,
Oh,
it sucks. It
it's
sucks.
it you know what it feels like? It feels like one of those, uh, like a TV show that gets canceled, like it's a good TV show, I guess you could
Yeah.
say, and then they just cancel it, and like there's no
Yes.
like
You're like,
you
what
never
happened to those characters?
what happened, and that's kind of like where the probe is, where it's like you take one step forward, two steps back, but like you were cracking on with it, and like things were getting fixed, and like you the amount of probe knowledge you have now, Ford probe
I
knowledge
know
is
it's stupid.
but it's awesome though.
The amount of
And
probe knowledge I have for as little miles I have on the car is pretty ridiculous.
yeah, but you learn so much with it, which is just great. But at the same time, like, you know, I don't know if the motor is toasted. I don't know. You already got Liam Neeson there. That's at
Oh
least
god, there's
to
so
my
many
knowledge,
shit cars.
to my knowledge, is motorless still. And
You're right.
I don't know. I think of all the cars, maybe this is the one. Maybe you need to keep going with it, Ethan.
Well, I'm kind of wondering too. So here's the funny thing is that uh yeah, there's so many things about this car that just drive me insane that make me so angry. But at the same time, there's a lot of potential here. There's not
Yeah.
many of these left. And when I look at the vehicle, it's not the body is not in great shape. There's hail dents all over it. The paint is in awful shape. It looks good from like about 30 feet.
Hmm.
Um, but it's kind of it's neat. Like I think if I could fix it up, I'd I'd probably get such a sense of accomplishment out of this car versus many other cars. Like I think that's one of the things that was driving me is this sense of accomplishment when I actually was able to, fix the vacuum leak, when I was able to like, take care of that initial problem with the water pump and I didn't do all the work myself, but I spent tons of time like doing
You
all the
did.
research, you know.
You did, and it's not like it's not a simple, air cooled Volkswagen or a Honda Civic. This is a complicated ass car.
Yes.
All these things is like there's so many little things that like I guess if you are a fan of transversely mounted V6 cars, like you kind of learn, and especially the ones from the 90s like this, like you think of like the same. I think Mitsubishi 3000 GT owners are kind of in the same uh,
Mhm.
boat, and like maybe to a degree, like Nissan Maxima owners, like whatever
Yeah.
generation that was. I always call it like the Fast and the Furious version, like whatever that one was.
Sure.
That when they still had them with the 5 speeds,
Yeah.
super crammed into the engine bay. Um, you're kind of a masochist to keep going with these things, but there's a reason people get these things and kind of fall in love with them, and it's because they're worth fighting for. And that's kind of where I think it is with the probe. Yeah, it's not a concourse level car or anything like that, but I mean,
No.
you said it, like the car is incredible, and like it's in this shape. Like imagine if it was in like the best shape it could be, and how awesome it would be. I mean, it's like
Well,
you,
that's the thing I'm trying to figure out too. Like, there's not many of these around. Occasionally, they do pop up. Occasionally, you'll see one of these for sale, and most often, there's some issue with them.
right.
Every once in a while, though, you'll see one that looks really nice, and you kind of wonder how that happened, because most of these were neglected or
Yeah.
modded within an inch of their lives. I mean, so like I'm on a Ford Probe Facebook group,
Hmm.
and many of these vehicles are very modded. It looks like it just takes you right back to the 90s where there's body kits and they're lowered. There's like glow lights underneath them. Like that's when I think of Ford Probes from the 90s, I think of that type of mods, like
Yeah.
stuff that I kind of think is a little bit tasteless, but stuff that like, 20 years later, or I don't know how, 30
Le-
years later,
yeah.
30 years later, I'm kind of like, oh yeah, that I can dig that.
Hey man,
I
Underglow's coming back.
I
It
know
really
exactly.
is. Like I'm like, it's really happening. It's kind of funny.
Yeah,
But
but it
yeah.
yeah. So I don't know. The thing is like, what do I do with this thing? It's a shell of a car now.
Mhm.
I have a couple ideas. It's like number one is I just find a Ford Probe fanatic and say, here, here's a shell. Here you go. I'll give it to you. I don't even care at this point. There's another option is that the KLZE motor apparently made about 200 horsepower, and that
Ooh.
was it's pretty much a direct swap. There's a couple things you need to do to make it work. So that's a possibility. I've seen a few KLZE motors available on eBay.
What motor is that from?
Um,
The KLZE. Is it another Mazda motor? Is it a V6?
It is another Mazda motor.
Okay.
It's another. So basically, in there right now is a KLDE, and I don't really know the difference between them, but I do know that it's quite a bit more
40
horsepower.
40 horsepower is 40 horsepower.
Yes, exactly.
That's like one Charade, one extra Charade powering it.
And there have been, and there's people that have done this in the Probe, and there's people that have done this in their like MX6s. So
okay.
So that's a possibility. The other possibility is I've always wanted to do an EV swap. I know this would be one of those vehicles that obviously the few Ford Probe fanatics would probably frown upon this, but it seems like that might be kind of an interesting
you can fight the three of them off. It's not going to be that hard.
Plus the body of this particular one, like I said, it's not a good looking Probe. It's kind of looks terrible. So
this just goes perfect in time. Didn't Yamaha just release the specs on that like 476 horsepower like EV motor?
I just saw that today. Yeah.
There you go. There's your answer.
I think that's the problem though, is that EV swaps are just so expensive. I could probably find a Nissan Leaf motor or something, and a old ass battery pack, and it would still cost me more than a KLZE motor.
Yeah.
So I'm not sure.
That's one of those things. It's like, you start talking about EV swaps and stuff, and it would be, I could see something like the Charade being a great candidate for it just because of the lack of availability of like the original thing. But like my assumption, I'm just going off on a limb, this KLZE motor is probably a lot more abundant than like a Daihatsu Charade motor. So
slightly more. Yeah.
Slightly more. No, it's not like a K series Honda engine or anything, but
sure.
But it's more available. So it'd probably be more, it would be really cool to do the EV swap, but I think from a monetary standpoint, it might just be easier to do that ZE swap.
The other thing is like, I don't know. There's probably other motors with a little bit of creativity and a little bit of engineering ability would fit and would, probably be better. I'm not really sure. The thing is, I just don't have that skill. I've always wanted to do a engine swap that would piss off people. Like, I mean, that's the thing. It's like I don't really care what engine goes in this thing as long as it's fun and it, fun on a back road and it's reliable. Throw like what is the motor that's in the Altima that's in like the VQ35. Just throw a VQ35 in there and just piss off everybody. Because nobody likes that motor.
You still got the transverse V6.
I know exactly. I want to make it as difficult as possible to work on.
Oh, that would be awesome. That would be so awesome. Okay, so the Probe is down for the count for the time being, which is very sad because I was starting to really I was starting to get a thing for it. I was like, this is kind of cool. And especially like, I mean, not that it takes much to get away from a fit up in the canyons or anything like that, but like, I was like, that thing is hauling ass. Like it was, I mean, within the speed limit, of course, but it was like,
yes, exactly.
I was like, wow, that's
I mean, here's the thing. I couldn't keep up with the Supra for sure.
Well,
definitely not.
Well, I mean,
yeah, exactly. I could keep up with the Fiat. I could keep up with the E30. But I mean, the thing with the motor that I had is there was very little low to mid range power. It was just nothing until you get up in the higher RPMs.
Yeah.
So yeah, I really had to keep the thing ringed out in order to keep up with anybody. So that was the only downside about that motor, is that it just really kind of felt like it was not doing anything at low RPMs. And I'm not sure, maybe that had something to do with the fact that the VRIS was not working properly.
Could have been.
Yeah. But anyway, it's a sad story of the Probe. The purple Probe, bought for $300, put way too much money into it, and then proceeded to kill it on Angeles Crest, the road that nobody knows about and you shouldn't drive.
But, if that is the case and this is the end of the story, it did have a hell of a last couple months of its life.
Sure. Yeah.
It got to become a YouTube star. It got to be a fun driver on Angeles Crest Highway. It had a good last hurrah. If this is indeed the end.
Yeah, and that's the thing. I'm not really sure what to do. Even from like the sense of, is it like there's other things I hate about the car. Like it's way too small for me. The seat does not go far down enough to the ground. Like I feel like I'm hitting my head on the ceiling. Like it's not good ergonomics for my body shape.
Okay.
So if you're taller, if you're over 6'3", I'm 6'3", so if you're over like 6 feet tall, the probe it just doesn't feel very comfortable. I'm looking out of the top of the windshield when I'm driving the thing. So that's the big downside of that vehicle. Unless I were to put like a aftermarket seat in it or something.
Sure.
But I've got quite a few broken cars in my fleet, so I have to decide which of these I'm going to actually work on and which I'm just going to let sit there and rot. I'm kind of thinking the Lexus is going away. I don't have the desire for that car.
That's a sad one because I was super excited when you got that thing because I love that car, that chassis, everything about it. It's the JDM nerd inside of me that's like, I got an Aristo. This is going to be so cool.
Sure.
And then it just kind of all went to shit with that car.
I just need to be smart. I need to have more mechanical ability to actually do engine swaps. Because if I have like 3 cars right now that could use a nice engine swap.
Oh yeah.
Quick engine swap. Take me a weekend.
That's the thing, that it's not going to be a hard thing to unload that GS because somebody's going to see it and be like, oh yeah, I've got a 2J sitting in my garage waiting to drop into that thing. Like these cars should have had from the factory, like they did come with in Japan. So,
it has a 2J, but it doesn't have the good one.
Yeah, that's what I meant to. You know what I meant to say.
Yeah, it has the old. Yeah, but it's like. I have a lot of ideas for that car too, in terms of like, take a Toyota V8 out of one of their trucks, like the 4.6 liter out of their truck, like, throw that in there. That'd be awesome.
Hell yeah, that would be
way beyond my scope, by my abilities, my skill set. So I just need to unload that. I really got to sell my Turbo Grand Prix because that's just sitting there not doing anything. And I know there's people that want that car. So the Galant is gone. I sold the Galant.
Yes.
Rad for Sale.
And I saw its last little picture you posted the other day, and I was like, oh, buy a little Galant. So
that's on its way to New York. So it's going about 3,000 miles from here.
Dang. Yeah. It was the only one in California. Now it's going to be the only one in New York. So
yeah, exactly. Apparently the buyer, I think their dad had one or something. So they're going to try to continue the restoration.
Oh, awesome.
So that's great. I was glad to let it go to somebody that actually like really loved these cars and not just somebody that was looking for basic transportation.
Right. And that's kind of the cool thing with the auction sites, not to dive too far into it. It's like you typically, if you're looking for just reliable transportation to get to work and to the laundromat, you're not going to go bring a trailer or a Rad for Sale or Cars and Bids, whatever, and buy a car there, So
exactly. And that's exactly the reason why I wanted to list it on one of those sites.
Right.
Because I wanted it to go to somebody that actually cared about that particular mark.
The times I've thought about, letting go of the Charade and letting the saga continue on with somebody else, I was like, well, if I was to list it on Rad for Sale, it would, I know it would probably go to somebody who would appreciate it for what it is, not like, oh, I just need something to get to work. It's like, oh, this is not the car. It's just when it breaks, it's done. That's
exactly.
So
and it's funny. There's a lot of talk about these auction sites on, like the Radwood Facebook group, and like any of these Facebook groups where people love these cars from the 80s, 90s. There's a lot of people that say, "Oh, this is just driving up prices. I can't afford anything anymore." It's like, yeah, I get that. There's a lot of discussion about this, and I get that to a degree. But at the same time, I feel like, the cars that are going up there, it's like the people that are buying those are the absolute enthusiasts. You're getting like really good examples of each of those cars.
Right.
And like just spend more than a day on Facebook Marketplace and OfferUp and Craigslist, and you can still find deals.
Yeah, you got to read above the headlines. Like, oh my
Yes.
God, this Acura Integra Type R sold for
Oh God.
$75,000. There's it's screwed. I'm never going to be able to get one. You can still find an Acura Integra Type R for probably under $30,000, which is a ton of money to spend on a 20-plus-year-old Honda. But like that's a very special car. They're out there. It's just the one that sold for that money happened to have only 19,000 miles on it. Somebody bought that car knowing that it was going to be an investment, just like somebody now that would probably buy like, I don't know, like a Fiesta ST and never drive it, and then sell it one day with the Recaros, of course, and get like 80 grand for it, because it's going to happen. I can tell you that'll happen with a Fiesta ST, as much as I shit on that car. But that's one of those things that 20 or 30 years from now, oh my gosh, there's so much money. That was the best example of the car.
Sure. And so here's one other example. So a little while ago, a couple weeks ago, actually there's been a couple of these. So there was a Jeep YJ. It's a 92 Wrangler. 92 Wrangler sold for, actually this was just a couple weeks ago. Sold for $20,000. It has 90,000 miles on the thing. Yeah, it looks nice. It's it's square headlight Wrangler, Jeep Wrangler. $20,000, and I see the comments on Twitter and I see the comments online. It's like, oh my gosh, we'll never be able to afford a YJ ever again. Like literally, I just got a free YJ. Like, you can still find deals. Like, in the one that I have is it's a little rough around the edges, but with a coat of paint, it would look just as good as that one that sold for 20 grand.
Well,
so I think that's the thing. It's like people get all worried and stuff. Like, yeah. I think there's a good thing about these cars going on these sites is that it actually means that people are saving them and they're not just going to get junked.
Like the trucks. That was a few weeks ago. Those like it was the truck, and it was like there was like a Suburban, like some mid '90s GM stuff that was like, it had really low mileage, and one of them sold for like $90,000 or something. I was like, what the hell? But it's out there. But that's the absolute best example of that in existence, theoretically. And so if somebody's got the money to pay for it, and maybe it means some there's some significance with it or some sentimental reason why they have to have that exact car, they're going to spend the money to have it. If they it is what it is.
Sure. And there's other cars, there's other really cool cars that are never going to reach those crazy heights. I would be surprised if my Nova Twin Cam, if any example of a Nova Twin Cam ever sold for more than 10 grand, like, because there's just there's just never going to be that many people interested in that car. And I love this car, but I think there's going to be a few cars like that just
right. Yeah,
there are cool cars out there that you can get for pretty decent money.
Mm-hmm.
So you don't have to get all worried about bringing a trailer. Just like, nothing, I'm not gonna be able to afford anything.
Yeah, no, you can. And the same, the same can be said with the Integra Type Rs. It's like, don't just read the headline, read the whole entire thing. Look at the statistics. Like, there's, there are not a lot of the cars are made, but there's enough there. If you want one, you're going to have to spend money for it. That's the thing. But just because all these prices are going up doesn't mean everything else is going up. They're still on there. You can still find like a sub $5,000 AE86 Corolla if you look hard enough and find one that's in okay shape. It's there.
I saw one on Craigslist not too long ago. It actually, it actually had an engine and a transmission. The interior was a little rough, but like, if you wanted a project, they are out there.
They are out there. So, don't worry, everybody. Don't worry. We're here to tell you, don't worry. It's
or if you are going to worry, just start looking into cars from like the 2010s. There you go. Yeah. Nobody cares about those cars yet. There's no nostalgia for a 2010 Chevy Malibu.
Or a 2013 Pontiac Solstice GXP coupe.
Yes. Oh man.
I think perfect segue into our next episode.
I think the segue into our next episode means it has to be me we have to talk about what modern cars we should buy, like you and I should buy. Like I mean, you have a good one, obviously. You've got that Fit, which you can rely on. Like the only car that I have right now that I can rely on is my wife's Prius. So all of my other cars have issues. I think I need to probably sell a couple of the cars that I don't really have a ton of love for from the Rad era, and get them over to somebody that absolutely loves that particular mark, and then probably find something a little bit newer, a little bit more reliable, something that I could take to the canyons and not worry about it overheating.
Yeah, no, that's a good idea. I mean,
Yeah.
have at least one that can do that kind of stuff, and that would make your life a little bit easier when it comes to doing things like setting up these little fun runs and stuff like that. To like, okay, well, I'm gonna bring the probe, and it's like, oh, this is gonna be awesome. And
Well,
you know,
I felt so terrible about this because it's basically you, I, and Adam Hove that just set up this drive. Let's get a few people together, have a fun drive, and then I have to leave halfway through the middle of the drive that I helped organize.
Yeah, but my car died. You made up for it though, because I mean, some of us took off after that, but you came back out in your
yes, the Polaris Slingshot R,
your adult tricycle.
That's shit. I haven't finished the review for this one. I should probably incorporate that.
The adult tricycle.
Yes,
that's what it is.
Yeah. So I had the Polaris Slingshot they let me borrow it for 2 weeks. So most car loans. Well, this isn't a car. So most vehicle loans are 1 week.
Right.
So, I'm lucky enough that occasionally I'll get a car from Toyota. Like I had the Toyota Sienna minivan. I recently had a Highlander. I'm actually going to test drive the new Mitsubishi Outlander, which I'm actually pretty excited about in a couple of weeks. But Polaris just reached to me out of the blue, and you're like, "You want me to drive this?" Okay. Yeah. So we'll have a whole episode about the Slingshot. But I had that car for 2 weeks. Sorry, I've had that vehicle for 2 weeks. And I did finish up our drive after I limped the probe home. I brought the Slingshot out to finish up our drive. Yep. And that, that's an experience. Like it's hard to put into words how I feel about that vehicle. Cause I think the first couple of days I had it, I'm like, I hate this thing. And then like I drive it on the canyons, I'm like, I love this thing.
It's like a warm beer, like a lukewarm beer. That's the vibe I get when anybody ever talks about a Slingshot. It's just like, just imagine taking a sip of a lukewarm beer. It's like, it's good because it's a beer, but it's also it's lukewarm. I'd like it to be cold. I guess that's just the way that whenever I hear anybody talk about that thing.
Okay. Well, let's talk about it a little bit. We have a little bit of time with this. We can go a little bit over with this episode. So, I'm sure everybody here that listens to this is at least tangentially aware of the Polaris Slingshot. 3-wheel vehicle, 2 wheels in the front, 1 wheel in the back. It looks ridiculous. It looks like a transformer essentially. Yes. Driving it around the streets of LA. Kids constantly like taking pictures out of the windows, like yelling and like, yeah, look at that thing. It looks awesome. Kids love this thing. And this was a Slingshot R. So it was the high performance one. It was in orange and blue.
Yes.
It looked just like I think that's what kids like about it, that it kind of looks like a supercar, and they think I'm some badass driving around in this thing. I'm like,
it's the new Lamborghini.
I know. No. And this thing is one of the most expensive Slingshots at just over 30 grand, but you can get these for about 20. That's the thing. Yeah, it's
that's not bad. I mean, I guess, and I've talked a lot of shit just because I haven't driven it, but like just my general perception of it is like, okay, all right,
yeah,
but okay, but I'm sorry, go on.
So really, if you're at all familiar with these things, you're like, well, is it a car or is it a motorcycle? And the answer to both of those questions is no. It's sort of in between. They technically call it an auto car. Apparently, Polaris lobbyists went to Washington to try to kind of make this a thing. So it doesn't have to pass crash tests. You technically don't have to wear a helmet in most states. You don't have to have the motorcycle license in most states. So it's kind of like this sort of gray area. it's like it's a car perfect for libertarians, I think. Like,
Yeah.
like basically it's this gray area where you're not really abiding by any laws. It's sort of
It's classified as a sidecar or
yeah,
something, right?
exactly.
Like riding a motorcycle, but with a sidecar. So it's like things get really sketchy with it. Like,
So the thing is like as a vehicle, like if you just think about it as itself, like it is fun on a canyon road. It is strange because you have one gigantic wheel in the back, which is the driven wheel for this particular vehicle. There's another three-wheel vehicle called the Vandenhall, which actually that's front-wheel drive. So this is a little different. So
oh,
the weight distribution is kind of interesting. You've got like 30% of the weight on the rear and most of the weight's on the front. So it's very easy to get this thing to get to be tail happy.
oh, yeah.
Um, it is, it doesn't have doors, it doesn't have a roof, and it's got these little bars. I see people driving these things without helmets, and I'm like, you're an idiot. So yeah, I
Is there a
definitely wear a helmet.
windshield? Is there a windshield with it?
There is a small plastic windshield, and I'm not sure if it's standard on all of them, but
So
this one
yeah,
this one had a
you'd
windshield.
have to wear a helmet because if you remember
Yeah.
being a kid or riding a motorcycle in a state that doesn't require a helmet. I mean, you should always wear a helmet on a motorcycle. You ever gotten a bug in your eye or a bug in your
Yeah.
teeth? It's disgusting, and I can just imagine how that would be driving down the 405 in a slingshot. But
Yeah, so I did take this all around Los Angeles traffic. I took it on the freeway. I took it on canyon roads. I tried to get the full experience of what it's like to own this thing. And I will say in LA traffic, I hated it mainly because I'm not a motorcycle driver. I'm not a motorcycle rider. Like I like having doors and windows. I like having structure around me. I'm never really a huge fan of convertibles. Um, so there is something to be said for like the calmness you get from knowing that there's safety gear around you. And I think that's the thing. I think if you're a good motorcyclist, you're constantly like hyper aware of your surroundings.
Mhm.
And I think that's the thing that when you're in a Polaris Slingshot, you probably get this like I think a lot of drivers in general like don't think about safety as much anymore because you have so much safety gear around you, like airbags and cameras and stuff. And I think if you're in a Slingshot, you might get a false sense of security because you've got more mass, but it's still probably not that much more safe than a motorcycle. So
No. And they're small and they're low, right? I mean, I'm
yeah,
thinking like this thing's like small and lower than like a Miata, like, and I'm talking like an NA Miata, not like
it's. I mean, you're only 5 inches from the ground, so
yeah,
it's pretty low.
it's tiny. I mean,
And some people can't see you. You see a brodozer, just assume
yeah,
they're not going to see you.
you're gonna get
Yeah.
squished.
Yeah, I think that's the thing. It's like, yeah, you're definitely done for if there's any kind of incident where like if you're on a motorcycle, you at least have the opportunity to avoid something by being able to lane split. In the Slingshot, I actually was on the freeway and somebody ran over a piece of plywood that started to fly up like in
Oh,
front of me.
that's
And I'm
nice.
like, well, I have nowhere to go. I can't lane split like a motorcyclist could. I don't have a roof or a windshield like a car would. So I'm kind of like, I'm sort of a sitting duck. So I just basically kind of just ducked for a second thinking, okay, well obviously it went off to the side. So it wasn't a big deal, but that was one of those things where I'm like, all right, that's a downside.
Yeah, like that's
Um,
enough for this for today.
uh,
Oh
but
yeah, I
but
couldn't imagine that. Ugh.
so and it's not fun around like semis and stuff. Like, oh geez, like it was not fun for me. But on the canyon road, once you get out of traffic, this thing is a lot of fun. It's really really quick because this has the power to weight ratio is insane.
Okay.
Like this is 200 something horsepower, 203 horsepower or
Oh
something, and it
shit.
weighs
Okay.
like 1,600 pounds. So it's
Oh
ridiculous.
shit. Okay, so it's okay. All right, it's not a
So
slouch.
much better power to weight ratio than a lot of vehicles.
Yeah.
So I think the thing that's great about it is it actually handles really well.
Okay.
It's fun around a canyon road. It is fun to have the open air experience. It's fun to be able to look up and just be like completely out, like even more than convertible. Like you're just like you see the road behind you. If I stuck your hand out the side, you could touch the ground if you wanted to.
Right. Right.
You had gloves on, you could just So I think that's the thing. It's like if you're a motorcyclist that wants to have a passenger, or maybe you're a little bit older and you don't want to be on a motorcycle anymore. Like I still can't really figure out the customer for this thing. But I don't think people are cross shopping this thing with a Miata, which a lot of people think
No,
they are, because a Miata is just such a different experience.
it's a
It's more
car.
technical, it's more precise. It gives you the same thrill, essentially,
Mm-hmm.
But I think maybe the slingshot is just more about being raw, more about being like, just I think the danger, honestly, is probably one of the selling points.
I
Um,
think you're right, and I think I know who they cross shop it against or what. So it's for this car, this auto car is for those people that
Autocycle, yeah, autocycle.
autocycle is for people that initially wanted to either build their own Caterham 7 in their
Yeah.
garage or just buy a Caterham and drive that thing around because that's the same. Everything you're explaining just is reminding me. It just sounds like a Caterham, except for it's just got one wheel out back. It's just the power to weight ratio is ridiculous, and you're like
Well,
tiny low, and you can. I've ridden in a Caterham 7 before, and you can, you know,
yeah,
set,
I think
the
the
brake down
thing
on the
is
ground.
that this just it's not going to handle anywhere near as well as that, and it
Oh no,
also, like a KTM crossbow or something like
right?
they kind of give you the same vibe, but like, yeah, not even comparable. I think the things that like I think the Polaris would have to be a lot better on a back road to like even kind of come into that class because
Okay,
the brakes on the slingshot, uh, they sucked. I mean, that's
oh,
the basic way I would want to put it. Like handling was really good, like super tight, but the brakes was like this huge weak point.
yeah. I mean, you'd figure they'd have to probably like figure out some place to cut it because you got this awesome power to weight ratio and it handles well, but like, well, how much braking can we give this car before like we have
I I
it's
bet, yeah, it's hard to say. Like, I bet an upgrade would probably help it, but that was like the one thing where I felt myself like not going as deep into a corner just because I'm like, I'm like, I felt like I was constantly hitting the ABS,
oh,
um,
wow.
which is weird. Like where I wouldn't have done that in a car.
Mm,
Um, so anyway, I think like it's a really unique experience. It's like I can see people totally getting into this thing. And actually, as I was doing research about this vehicle, I see a lot of people in like Miami Beach driving these things around, just cruising. Like I think these are like a total like awesome cruiser. Like you just
like
like,
a Miami Beach or like Vegas
yeah,
Strip, one of those things. Like
exactly.
oh, I just rented this thing for the night, and I'm gonna go roll
Well,
hard down the Vegas Strip in it or
and people
South
customize
Beach.
and people customize the hell out of these things where,
Really?
yeah, where I think that's probably another big market is just like wanting to have like it's pretty inexpensive. It kind of gives you the look and feel of a supercar on a super crazy low budget, and it's really easy to customize. And it's also the type of vehicle that everybody looks at. So if you're
Yes.
that type of person that just wants that attention, you're gonna get it because everybody looks at this thing, and because you just don't see them that often. So yeah, it's interesting. Like I tried to look at it from the perspective of, okay, I like to drive on canyon roads. Can this thing be fun on a canyon road? And it absolutely can. It probably wouldn't be my first choice, but it definitely, maybe with a few modifications, it could be pretty serious contender.
Sure.
Or just at least fun. In a different experience. Like I think that's the thing. You have to like that thrill of just being kind of open and not having any safety gear, no
Right.
airbags, and that's part of it. That's part of the whole experience. It's like it gives you some of the thrill of being on a motorcycle,
Yeah.
but also gives you a little bit of the practicality of having a car. You got seats, you can take a passenger, you got space for bags, and
Huh.
it's a weird, interesting thing. I'm glad that they make it, but it's so
Yeah,
odd.
it's something. It's one of those things that you didn't think the automotive world needed until it came out, and now the way you talk about it now, it does make sense. It does fit a very weird, distinctive niche of people that like need something like this. Like, they don't want to ride the motorcycle, they fell off their motorcycle,
Yeah,
and like this is all they can do now, and it gives them that same sort of experience. But at the same time, it fits the like, I want to go cruise down, the the boulevard in this thing and get everybody to look at me, go drive down to Venice Beach with this thing. It checks a lot of boxes for the people that are looking for things like that. It may
yeah,
not be the first choice for an absolute driving enthusiast, but for somebody else, there's definitely a market for them. And I see them,
yeah.
maybe one
I
or
saw
two.
one yesterday.
Yeah, and I'm
Yeah,
like, most of the time I see them, people are wearing helmets in them, but I have seen a few that people aren't wearing helmets.
No.
I just
the one I saw yesterday, dude, no helmet. I'm like, come on, man.
How many bugs are in your teeth? So
nah, yeah, yeah. It's so interesting. Like, actually, I did take it up all the way Angeles Crest after, and I probably should have done that to begin with on our trip that morning, but it was so cold.
So cold. You would have been frozen by the time you got up there.
Well, and this thing, does not have heat. This one, you can get heated and cool seats. This one did not have it. So I would have been freezing my ass off.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's the other thing about it. It's definitely a toy. You have to have a garage for this thing. I mean, where are you going to store it? I mean, it's waterproof, but you're not going to store this thing outside.
Right.
So, yeah, it's limited to a certain demographic for sure.
It's in that same sort of category I see as like these like I don't even know what you call them, but like these like little 4-wheel like 4-seater ATV things. I don't even know what the proper name for them.
I think they call them side by sides.
Side by sides. Like they're getting very, very popular. Like in the last 10 years.
And Polaris makes all those.
There you go. So it's a toy, right? So you just take it. That's what you see driving off road and stuff like that. And it's not as maybe we need to give this Polaris company more of a thought, because they got some really crazy ideas. Like make these side by sides that. It's not like you're fully committing to buying a Jeep and going through everything when you have this thing that's like small, compact, is easy on the trails. And then the same goes for the Slingshot. It's like, that's interesting. And Polaris, they're the company that made Sea-Doos initially, right? Is that how they got their...
That is a good question. I don't know the answer to that.
I think I could have sworn I remember they made Watercraft first. Watercraft. It's always fun to say that. I haven't got to say that on the podcast yet. They did
Watercraft. Yeah. I don't know.
I think that's how they kind of got their start, was in the watercraft industry.
Well, I know they made snowmobiles for sure. So that's one thing. So
snowmobiles. That's a whole. I've never ridden one, but I've heard some snowmobile stories about
another unsafe vehicle.
I heard they can rip. I heard they drag race those things and they rip. But that's some YouTube searching for everybody later on. Look up snowmobile drag races and you'll get a kick out of it. You'll go down the snowmobile rabbit hole like I did on YouTube a couple weeks ago. It's pretty wild. They absolutely rip. Interesting. Well,
yeah.
Well, that's cool. I mean, it's awesome that they reached out to you and let you go take out the fun one like that.
Yeah.
I'm looking forward to seeing a review and seeing, more of it. Yeah, I've never really seen one super up close either. So
yeah, you missed out. It was
I took off a little early from our drive. I should have stuck around. I would have.
Yeah, it's a weird vehicle, but cool in a lot of strange ways.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well. Yeah, that's a good one. I think we'll have to do maybe we'll do a Q&A episode next time. What do you think?
Yeah, we could definitely do one. I think that would be a ton of fun.
All right. I think that's good. We'll talk about that. We'll talk about questions that our listeners have. Maybe we'll try to make a little bit more progress on our rally. If we try to get a rally together, maybe by end of the year, hopefully if we can punch COVID down back into the ground and be able to do a rally by the end of the year, that would be fantastic. And we got to hear how your time attack went.
Yes.
When are you doing that?
That's on the 21st of May. So we're still
so we're a
little more than a month out. So, but yeah, that's coming up. So yeah, we'll definitely hear about that when that happens.
All right.
So
cool.
It'll be very good. So
sweet. Well, that was a fun one. We get to talk about lots of fun stuff.
Sure was.
Going on roads where we won't tell you where they are. So yeah. All right. Well, thanks everybody for listening. Where can everybody find you on the interwebs? Are you still tweeting? Still doing some tweeting Paul?
I send some capybara retweets every once in a while.
Okay.
That's pretty much what my Twitter's good for. Is
you just retweet Guar?
Them too, but a lot of capybara stuff. Yeah, it's a vibe, Yeah, everybody needs to like watch a capybara video once a day. Just get yourself get yourself in that zen. It's good. It's really good stuff. But you can find me on both Instagram and Twitter at Paul's Finest Hour, and That's
Nice.
me. What about you?
Nice. You can find me on youtube.com/Hello Road. I just did a review of a 4Runner Turbo, a 1986 4Runner Turbo. Did you even know they made a
Did not
4Runner
know
Turbo?
they made a turbo
Yeah.
here.
Yep.
Turbos were illegal until like 2003.
I know. Just recently did a showdown between a 1994 Toyota Previa and a 2021 Toyota Sienna, which was a fun one, which
so
is
good.
completely unnecessary. But
It's so good.
Working on a video with a. Did I tell you? We don't have a lot of time, but I got to borrow a Jurassic Park Ford Explorer. Did I tell you that?
No.
So this is Ryan, the guy that used to own. Yes. So he owned a Daihatsu. He let me borrow his Jurassic Park Explorer for a day. So I made a video with it.
Yes.
So
I know Ryan very well. He had a very, very nice Daihatsu Charade. He had
and he sold it.
Probably the nicest example, and I think it's in a museum in Massachusetts now. Or
wow.
Something. Yeah.
Wow.
So
anyway, you can also find me on Instagram.com/Mr. Ethan Tufts, Twitter, Mr. Ethan Tufts, and then I don't know. I should probably start a TikTok, but that seems like what the kids are all doing nowadays. But I'm too old for that, so I probably won't.
I just look at them on Reddit.
Yeah, exactly. I look at TikToks on YouTube because I'm old.
Yeah.
Yep.
You do it.
All right. Thanks for listening, everybody.
Thanks, everyone.
All right.
Good night.
Bye.